What happens when two powerful voices enter the same studio believing they are fully prepared, but only one of them truly understands how loud silence can become? This is a dramatized reenactment inspired by the kind of high-tension moments that can unfold on live television. The studio is already awake before the cameras roll. Bright lights hang overhead like suspended tension, reflecting off the glossy desk where everything will soon unfold. The audience is seated, shifting quietly, unaware that the calm they're witnessing is only temporary. There's a soft hum from the control room, producers speaking in low, controlled tones, checking timing, adjusting cues, preparing for a segment they know could tilt unexpectedly. Sara Haines sits at the panel with her familiar composed posture. She isn't rushed, she isn't performing yet. But there's awareness in her eyes, the kind of awareness that tells you she knows exactly how live television can shift in seconds. She glances at her notes once, then looks up, offering a polite smile to a co-host off-camera. Across the studio, Alina Habba sits with a different kind of energy. Still, focused, unreadable in a way that makes the room feel slightly tighter. She's not reacting to the noise around her. She's waiting for her moment, not looking for approval, not seeking reassurance. Just waiting. A producer leans in from behind the cameras, giving a countdown with fingers. 5 minutes. Then 3. Then 1. The air subtly changes each time the number drops. Sara adjusts her mic. A small movement, almost invisible, but in a live studio, nothing is invisible for long. Alina folds her hands, then releases them again. A quiet reset, like someone preparing for impact. And then, just before the cameras go live, something small happens that no one outside the control room notices. A brief exchange between producers, slightly longer eye contact than usual, a pause where there shouldn't be one. Not panic. But anticipation. The red light turns on. Live. The audience claps automatically, trained by habit and excitement. The sound fills the studio, but it doesn't feel loud enough to match the tension already forming beneath it. Sara opens the segment with ease, voice smooth, controlled, almost comforting. She sets the tone, guiding the audience into the discussion. Everything appears normal on the surface. But live television is rarely about the surface. Alina listens first. Not interrupting. Not reacting too quickly. Her eyes stay steady, locked on the conversation like she's mapping every word, every pause, every opportunity. Sara transitions into the topic carefully, choosing her phrasing with precision. There's a moment where she glances toward Alina, inviting, polite, professional. That's where the shift begins. Alina leans slightly forward. Not aggressive yet. Just present in a more deliberate way. When she speaks, her tone is measured, almost calm, but there's weight behind every word. The kind of weight that doesn't need volume to be felt. Sara responds immediately, still composed, but now sharper in delivery. The conversation tightens. The rhythm changes. The panelists around them start to adjust their posture subtly, sensing the temperature rising. The audience doesn't fully notice yet. They think this is just discussion. Debate. Normal television energy. But Sara's expression shifts for the first time, just a fraction. A tightening around the eyes. Not frustration. Not anger. Something closer to realization that this isn't going to stay simple. Alina continues, unshaken. Her voice remains steady, but the confidence in it grows with each sentence. She isn't raising her volume. She doesn't need to. Sara responds again, this time with more edge. Still controlled, but less soft than before. The first real friction appears between them, invisible to some, obvious to others paying attention. A producer in the back straightens. Someone taps a headset. The control room is watching closely now. Sara tries to steer the conversation back into structure, back into order. That's her strength, guiding chaos into clarity. But Alina doesn't follow the steering. She holds her ground. A pause stretches for half a second too long. That's all it takes. The audience shifts. A few people stop smiling. Sara asks a follow-up question, but the tone is different now. Less inviting. More direct. Alina responds, but instead of answering in a straight line, she challenges the framing itself. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just firmly enough that the air changes again. And for the first time, Sara pauses before replying. It's subtle. Almost invisible. But in live television, a pause like that is not silence. It is pressure building. The camera slowly tightens its framing without anyone announcing it. The director senses it too. Sara continues, now visibly more engaged emotionally. Still controlled, but the calm has edges. She gestures slightly as she speaks, emphasizing her point. Alina remains steady. Almost still. That contrast begins to define the entire energy of the segment. One is moving with the conversation. The other is anchoring it. The audience is now fully aware something is happening, even if they can't name it. Sara leans in slightly, voice firmer. Alina responds instantly. No hesitation. That's when the first real spark hits, not explosive yet, but undeniable. A shift in tone that says, this is no longer just discussion. And somewhere off camera, a producer signals for extended segment coverage. Because everyone in the room now understands, this moment is no longer following the script. And it's only the beginning. The tension reaches a point where even the smallest sound feels amplified. Paper rustling. A chair adjustment. A breath taken too sharply. Everything matters now. Sara tries once more to regain smooth control of the segment, but Alina interrupts, not rudely, not loudly, but precisely. That precision lands harder than volume ever could. Sara stops speaking for a fraction of a second. And in that fraction, the studio realizes something irreversible, the conversation has changed ownership. The audience sits forward. The panel goes quiet for a beat longer than comfortable. And the cameras keep rolling. No one has walked off yet. No one has raised their voice. But the storm is no longer approaching. It is already inside the room. The moment Sara pauses, even slightly, the entire rhythm of the studio shifts in a way everyone feels but no one immediately reacts to. It's not dramatic on the surface. No shouting, no interruptions that would normally signal chaos. Instead, it's something more dangerous in live television, control slipping in real time. Alina holds her position, eyes steady, expression unchanged. There's no satisfaction on her face, no visible attempt to dominate the moment. That calmness itself becomes the pressure point. Because Sara is now responding not just to words, but to presence. Sara resumes, but her tone is different now. Still professional, still anchored, but sharper at the edges. She leans slightly forward, hands subtly more active than before. The shift is small, but noticeable to anyone trained to read live conversation dynamics. Alina listens fully before responding again. When she speaks, she doesn't match Sara's intensity. She lowers it. Not in submission, but in contrast. And that contrast is what unsettles the flow. Each of Alina's sentences lands like a deliberate placement rather than a reaction. Sara tries to reclaim the structure of the conversation, redirecting it back to her framing. She asks a pointed follow-up, designed to narrow the argument into something controllable. For a second, it seems like it might work. But Alina doesn't accept the framing. She gently reframes the premise itself. It's subtle, but it lands like a shift in the ground beneath the discussion. Sara blinks once, slow and controlled, absorbing it. The audience begins to react audibly now, small murmurs, the kind that grow when people realize they're watching something unscripted. A producer in the control room raises a hand slightly. The director doesn't cut. They let it breathe. Sara responds again, and now there's a visible edge of urgency. Not anger, but a need to regain balance. She gestures lightly, voice tightening as she reinforces her point. Her posture remains composed, but the energy is no longer fully calm. Alina remains almost still. And that stillness becomes louder than movement. Sara attempts to challenge one of Alina's statements directly. This is the first clear pivot from discussion into confrontation territory. The tone sharpens. The pacing quickens. The words begin to overlap slightly at the edges, not interrupting, but pressing against each other. Alina finally matches the directness, but not the volume. She responds with precision, each word measured, each pause intentional. It's not louder, it's clearer. And that clarity starts to shift perception in the room. Sara exhales slightly through her nose, a sign of restraint slipping just enough to be noticeable. She tries again to steer the conversation, but now there is resistance at every turn. The panelists around them stop reacting casually. Smiles fade. Heads tilt. Eyes move between the two speakers more frequently. The audience is no longer passive, they're tracking every exchange like a live wire. Then it happens. Sara pushes a point with stronger emphasis, her tone rising just slightly above conversational control. It's not a shout, but it is the first unmistakable increase in emotional intensity. Alina responds instantly. And this time, she doesn't soften anything. The exchange locks. No interruptions. No pauses. Just direct verbal impact meeting direct verbal response. Sara's expression tightens, just enough to show she feels the shift. Alina remains steady, but her gaze sharpens, fully engaged now. The energy between them becomes dense, almost physical. The studio feels smaller. The lighting feels harsher. Even the audience sound begins to fade into controlled silence. Sara attempts one more structural reset, trying to bring the conversation back under control. But Alina steps in again, not aggressively, but decisively, cutting off the path back to comfort. And that's the moment the tension breaks its ceiling. Sara stops smiling entirely now. Her professionalism is intact, but the emotional undercurrent is no longer hidden. Alina, however, stays composed, almost unmovable. A brief silence falls. Not empty. Loaded. Then Sara speaks again, but this time, it's personal in tone, sharper in framing, less abstract. The conversation is no longer about ideas. It's about positioning. Alina responds without hesitation. And for the first time, the audience reacts loudly, gasps, small exclamations, audible shifts in energy as people realize the debate has crossed into something far more intense than expected. The director zooms slightly tighter. The control room is fully engaged now. Sara looks directly at Alina, holding eye contact longer than before. Alina doesn't break it. The air feels suspended. And then Sara delivers a line that changes everything, not louder, but sharper, more pointed than anything before it. It lands with silence after it, not response. Alina doesn't speak immediately. That pause stretches. And in that pause, everyone knows something irreversible has just been set in motion. Sara waits. Alina finally responds, but instead of matching the emotional escalation, she lowers the temperature deliberately. And that contrast makes the moment even more intense. Because now it's not just disagreement. It's imbalance. Sara's composure begins to visibly strain at the edges. Alina remains grounded, calm, almost detached, but fully present. The studio is now in full tension mode. No one is smiling. No one is relaxed. And then, Sara attempts to regain control one final time in this segment, her voice firm, slightly elevated. But Alina interrupts again. This time not with aggression. With finality. And that's when the energy snaps into something else entirely. The segment teeters on the edge of collapse. And the cameras keep rolling. The tension doesn't resolve. It escalates. And what comes next is no longer debate, it's confrontation in its purest form. The moment Alina finishes that final interjection, the studio doesn't react immediately. It's as if everyone is waiting to see whether the conversation will continue normally or completely break form. Sara doesn't respond right away. That delay changes everything. Her expression tightens, not in anger, but in visible recalibration. She has to choose, continue the structured path or acknowledge the shift that just happened. She chooses to continue, but the tone is now fully different. More direct. Less forgiving. Alina, however, remains calm. That contrast becomes the defining visual of the moment. One voice rising in intensity, the other staying grounded. Sara leans in slightly, emphasizing her words with controlled force. The audience is now fully engaged, no background noise, just attention. Alina responds, and this time there's a subtle firmness in her tone that wasn't there before. Not emotional escalation, but resolution. The exchange becomes tighter, faster. Sara tries to challenge a specific point again, but Alina immediately reframes it, cutting off the direction before it can settle. And this is where the turning moment arrives. Sara's composure cracks just enough to show frustration, not uncontrolled, but undeniably present. She pauses briefly, breath measured, then responds with heightened intensity. Alina doesn't mirror it. She lowers it again. That imbalance creates the most uncomfortable tension yet. The studio feels frozen between two frequencies, one rising, one steady. Sara attempts a final strong assertion, voice clear, firm, designed to end the exchange on her terms. But Alina delivers her response slowly, deliberately, with a calm finality that shifts the entire emotional weight of the room. Silence follows. Not brief. Heavy. Sara looks at her for a moment longer than usual. And then, Alina removes her mic. No announcement. No dramatics. Just a quiet, deliberate movement. She stands. The audience reacts instantly, gasps, murmurs, movement across seats. The panel freezes. Sara stays seated, watching, composed, but visibly processing what just happened. Alina steps away from the desk, expression unchanged, and exits the frame calmly. No words. No final glance back. Just departure. The studio doesn't immediately cut. The cameras hold for a second longer than expected. Sara remains on screen, regaining composure in real time, breathing steady again, posture returning to professional control. But the energy in the room has already shifted permanently. And then the segment slowly transitions out. Afterwards, the silence feels louder than the confrontation itself. People don't immediately speak. Not in the studio, not online, not in the moment. Because what they witnessed wasn't just disagreement. It was two completely different approaches to pressure colliding in real time, one expressive, one restrained, one reactive, one controlled. And in that contrast lies the deeper takeaway. Not about winning. Not about losing. But about how pressure reveals character more than words ever can. Because in moments like this, it isn't the loudest voice that defines the room. It's the one that remains steady when everything else begins to shift. And long after the cameras stop rolling, that is the part people remember most.